So I got a comment from Jaleno or Jalono Zero. Do you have any tips or guide on how to turn a yard space that is covered in lawn grass to a garden bed? Yes, actually I do. And it's actually really simple. There are two ways to go about it. So the first way to go about it is this, and I'll tell you both examples that we've done in the past. So at the old house, what we did is when we wanted to turn our backyard space to a garden, the first thing we had to do was just mow down the entire area. Really low. If it's grass, if it's weeds, at least pull up the weeds that you know are going to be a problem if you notice that they're going to turn into trees later. Because, boy, fighting against that is crazy. But cut it down as low as you can. And there are different options after this step. You can go with the route of getting landscape fabric or weed cloth, that kind of deal. Or you can cover it with just new soil, or you can cover it with wood chips, that kind of deal. Or you can do a combination of those. So what we did is we mowed down all the grass, and we had noticed that there was this tree service company or tree service just down the street from us who was cutting down the trees and the branches and all that stuff and throwing it in their chipper in the back. And I believe it was my mother and my father went out and asked them what they were going to be doing with all that. They said that they had to go and drive out some place and pay to dump it off there. And we were just like, hey, well, you can just dump it off at our house. It's right here. So they agreed to do it. They took a few truckloads and dumped it in our front yard, and we just shoveled all that into the backyard and just filled it up. I mean, it was crazy because at first the soil was like down here somewhere, and by the time we were finished, it raised up about 6 to 8 inches. And over the course of maybe like a month or two, it broke down from 8 inches to like 6 to 4 inches. So that was really cool to see. And that's how we turned the first backyard into a garden space. Now, what is a necessary step that we notice is that you can't always directly plant into the wood chips, even if it's broken down, because it's not completely turned into soil yet. It's just broken down wood, you know what I'm saying? And some, leaves and stuff like that. So if you pull back the wood chips, add a layer of compost, plant your seeds, and then cover that back up, then you're good to go. Or you can go the other route, which I've seen my mother do, is she would take landscape fabric and she would cover the entire area with that, stake it down, wait a couple weeks, let the sun cook out all the roots of the grasses and stuff like that, scorch all that, remove the landscape fabric, and then add her compost or add her soil on top of the grass that was there, and then plant. What you don't want to do is cover it up with landscape fabric, wait for it to die off, uncover it, and then dig. Because the moment you start digging into it, what you're doing is you're uncovering all those weed seeds and all those grass seeds that's just directly under what was already exposed. So that's what we did at that house. Now, over at the Research Garden Plot, what you've seen me do, or if you haven't seen my TikTok videos, what I did was I went to the street department and I just covered all the grass with just the soil that they provided, because the grass was already super low, and I think it was just some random weed anyway that was easy to snuff out. So I just covered all that with a bunch of soil, and then I planted my seed inside of that. Simple as that. There's not a lot to it if you think about it. So if you really want to turn your backyard space into a raised bed or to a garden space, that kind of deal, it's literally that simple. Don't make it any more complicated than that. What I will note and say, however, is if the grass is quack grass or Johnson grass, you're gonna have to leave that weed cloth on there for a while, or you're gonna have to cover it with a shit ton of mulch or wood chips and leave it there for a while, because that stuff is gonna come back with a vengeance. and you're gonna have to contend with that in your garden year after year after year, which I noticed in some areas of our old house. In the garden, we still had to pull up grass multiple times and then add more wood chips into that area. And after maybe about 3 years or so, it wasn't an issue having any grasses and stuff come up. Now, over the course of times, if you do use the wood chip method, the wood chips are going to break down. Like I said, they're going to create healthy soil, right? Going to bring in some more beneficial insects. They're going to move and break up the soil and all that good stuff. And what will happen is, because that layer is decreasing more and more and more, you're going to start getting weed seeds that are blowing into your garden starting to come up, and you're going to have to fight against that. And the best way to do that is just cover it up with more mulch or pull up the weeds as you see them. It's going to be easier as if you use the wood chip method, because the wood chips doesn't really provide a solid tight base for the roots to grab a hold of and stay there. It's like really loose. So you pull up dandelion weeds and the roots are about 8-9 inches long, and you just easy, super simple. Now when you do it directly in the soil, it's a little tougher. So I would highly recommend using the wood chips and stuff like that. If you want to go the landscape fabric method, do landscape fabric and then do compost and then cover it with wood chips, or just landscape fabric and then the compost or the soil, you can definitely do that as well. I just find it tends to be a little bit more work involved. Okay, so I noticed that I said that there's like 2 ways to do it, but now thinking about it, there was another way that we did it. The very beginning, I'm talking, I was probably like 9 years old or 8 years old, maybe. Nah, I was young. I want to say about 9 or 10 when we first started gardening, right? How do I explain? Let me try it like this, right? Hopefully you can see me. So if I had a shovel, what we was doing is we dig, we break up the soil, but we'd also like pull up this patch of just grass. We'd set it aside. Then we continue digging, and we would take that soil and throw it over here separate, right? Place those big blocks of grass inside this trench, then cover it with soil again. That was literally the very first way that we ever turned our gardens or our yard into a garden. And that took a lot of work, which it doesn't cost you much money anyways. It's just again, if you break up the soil like that, what you're doing is you're exposing the weed seeds that are underneath, and you're just bringing it up to the top so that they can grow and flourish. So there's options now. I would still cover that, even that, with some compost or with some wood chips or with something, just so then you don't have to contend as much with whatever's trying to spring up. I really appreciate you asking your question. Don't be afraid to reach out if you still need more support and clarification on some stuff, or even just, I don't know, find me on TikTok or Instagram and just shoot me a photo of your backyard space that you're working with, and I can see what I can do from there, man.